And I want you to start off by telling us a little bit about your story, how you became interested in reincarnation, and also how that played a part in your writing this book. And I'm going to pin you so we get to see you.
So you get to see me
And
all big.
yeah, wonderful.
Yeah.
So tell us,
As long as I can see you all. I don't want to see me all big. That's all.
yeah, can you see us?
I can see all of you. Yeah. Yeah. That's
Okay,
good.
good. All right. So tell us a little bit about your story, how you became interested in reincarnation, because I know you're on several Facebook groups about reincarnation and spiritual growth. So tell us your story.
Okay, absolutely. Well, I guess, the first, I never really thought about it. I remember one time when I was younger, somebody mentioning, I was like, no, 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 that's not what I learned in church, right? And I grew up in an Episcopal church, which was really kind of a blessing because it does give you some framework, but it's the most open-minded, probably one of the most open-minded churches that you can get. But I just thought, nope, it's not taught, so I don't believe it, right? I just kind of, but then the first time I was really exposed to it was Shirley MacLaine's Out on a Limb. I don't know if any of y'all read that book or saw that when I saw the mini series, and I was like, oh man, I'm blown away. And I think that was kind of the big kind of picking off point for me to start researching and learning. And, and then I read a lot of Dick Seffin books because it was even before Brian Weiss, if that, tells you how long ago it was. And it just kind of made all the sense in the world. And so I started kind of getting into it and learning it. And I found some friends at the job that I had that, a couple of friends that believed in it, so I could have some people to talk to. And then I actually went to a channel and learned more about it from a channel, um, and went to went down that kind of road. And so so that was, gosh, late 80s, mid 80s or something like that when that miniseries came out. And so it just kind of made sense. And then I started having these memories that were like dreams, I guess. I call them a dreamery. If you've read the book, you'll know I call them a dreamery. Um, but a dream that's a memory. And I had this dream that I was imprisoned and um, that I was let me back up. I think it was somewhere in Belgium, but I don't know where. I haven't gotten like that kind of regression to get to the details, but I got the basic picture. And the message, the dream was, I was like a 14-year-old boy. All the men were off at a war. And I was like, I thought I was hot stuff, right? I'm the oldest guy, I could protect the women and children. I thought it was really cool. And because of kind of my arrogance, I got captured by the enemy and I was put in prison and died in prison and died of starvation.
Mm.
And so I thought, well, this is really interesting and I've got to learn this. So I actually went to a therapist, a psychologist, who did regression. And I could even feel my body shrinking. It was just so weird. I had this like really, really strong visceral reaction to the thing. And then not long after that, maybe a year or two after that, I got a little bit more memory, and I knew I was a 14-year-old boy, young man, whatever, and I had a younger brother who was maybe 8. And when I got in prison, then all the pressure went on him, and that was really overwhelming for him. And then in real life, I meet the guy who is a guy now, who was my younger brother. And it was just so interesting to kind of put that piece together because this guy, um, we just kept for literally for years and years and years, we just keep circling back to each other. And so that was kind of like, why is this? Like I could think about him and then he would call, but it could be a year or two in between conversations. Um, and what's also interesting about that particular story is in this lifetime, he's also younger, probably about the same number of years younger. And yeah, we dated. I guess I should probably say that. Um, but he um, he was born into an extremely wealthy family, and he is the heir apparent, or was the heir apparent to this multi-billion-dollar company, private company, family business, and but he kind of had the same kind of pattern from that previous lifetime where he was kind of overwhelmed with this all this pressure and responsibility that he just wasn't ready for. So that was just something that kind of got me into that. And then so I kept reading and learning and studying, but I didn't I wrote my first book I wrote was actually nonfiction, and it's called Five Reasons Why Bad Things Happen: How to Turn Tragedies into Triumph. And that one, even though there's obviously implications within reincarnation, it's not about that. But then a few years after that, I thought, you know what, I'm going to try writing fiction, and wrote my first book, not first fiction book, and it was I just thought, okay, I'm just going to write a love story that I want to write, and it was all kind of fine, and I liked it, and it came out really really fast. But it wasn't until I wrote the second book that I started writing them as like, okay, now I want to see this couple in a previous lifetime, and how does that affect them today? And so that's where I really got into writing fiction about reincarnation. And now I've written that series turned into a series of 4 novels. They're called DUET stories, and then those are available on Amazon. And then I've written a number of film scripts for TV and film that deal with reincarnation, and actually pitched them to a major studio, but nothing happened. But maybe it's just the timing of the world. And then but one of them was actually this We Meet Again, which I started writing as a TV series, and then I thought, no, I'm going to write it as a novel series, with the idea of, while I'm writing it, how it could be adapted into television. So, and when I first was writing, I knew, like, I don't know who here has read it. I know you said you have, but has anybody else read the book? Okay, which is totally fine. But when I knew the idea for it, you know, a long time before I wrote it. But it's like I knew where it was going to end. I knew what the big message was, and where it was going to go. But as I'm writing, I'm like, you're kind of figuring out process. And now I'm over halfway finished with book 3 and there'll be 3 books in the series. It's getting richer and richer and richer all the time. So it's fun to look back and go, okay, now I see where everything is going. But just to give you all a clue, which actually, Carol, you don't know this because it's not really clear in the first book, but this is going to turn out to be a famous real world couple, and they're reincarnated. They have multiple lifetimes, so we start in present day and how they meet each other, and then start remembering who they were in their previous lifetime. But that ties into the one lifetime before that, which ties into the one before that, which ties into the one where they're famous. And it's like a Da Vinci Code type of mystery where they're basically being reborn to try to pull this mystery together. So it's, they've got people against them and people who want the mystery, and just like you would in any kind of great, you've got this huge thing that they're trying to prove, and there's some people who do want it proven and some people who do want it proven. So anyway, yeah, it's been super fun to write. And the first, I sent it out to a group of what they call beta readers last year, and the feedback was phenomenal. Just amazing. I even had one fan who was just like, you don't know how much this changed my life. I mean, this like saved my life. And it was just like, wow, yeah. It's like, that's why, right? That's why we want to do this. It's not just because it's cool and fun, but because it can really make a difference.
My next question is, were the characters based on your memories of your past lives, or are they maybe a composite? Because I know you talk to other people who remember their past lives. So was it a composite of other stories that you've heard, or was it based on your own personal past lives? Or
Neither. Just when I knew where it was going at the end, right? Where this big, this famous couple, and where it was, this big mystery, and this, I think, okay, how do I build that? And I'll give you a little spoiler into book 2, is one of their past lives is in the late 1500s, is that, you've got the present day, but then you've got the previous lifetime, and how all of those lifetimes build upon each other. And it's also fun when you're writing something that's, that incorporates a love story, is like who they are now and you get to see the relationship develop. But then you go back to who they were, like as you know in book one, their present day, and then they go back to the 1300s in Brazil, and he's a priest and she's a nun, right? And then what do you do with that? And then the one before that is in the 1500s, and it was really really fun to tie that time period, which is such an important time period. I don't know how many people here know who Giordano Bruno was. Yes, and so he was also. This is in the late 1500s. He was also I said, no, no, no. The Earth goes around the sun. The sun doesn't go. Everybody doesn't circle the Earth. And by the way, the universe is infinite and all these things. And they're like, no, heresy, heresy, heresy. He also was a big believer in reincarnation. And so I wanted to pick that time period because it's such an interesting one. And he actually goes to Oxford to give a talk. This is all true, real life stuff. And nobody's done any. There's a lot of speculation about how much Bruno inspired Shakespeare. And if you look at some of the Shakespearean, plays, there's some references that really sound like he met Bruno, but nobody knows if they did. And then I have my characters throw in something else that's like, oh man, now we kind of are making some sense. So Bruno paved the way for Galileo not to be as persecuted as Bruno was, because I think they felt
Yeah.
bad. But he was just an amazing. If you study him, he's just an amazing person in history. So I wanted to weave him, and I'm weaving some other famous reincarnation believers into the story as well. So because I have a list of like probably 100 different really, I mean, like you probably already know, but Plato, Socrates, Aristotle, they all believed in reincarnation.
Right.
So it's fun to tie the real history into the story.
Oh, so it's like a historical fiction.
It's a really good question. It really depends on who I talk to, what category they want to put the book. Is it a mystery? Is it a love story? Is it historical fiction? Is it fantasy? Is it magical realism? I say yes. It's kind of all of those things. Because
Yeah.
I don't think I mean, yes, of course I'm writing like my fictional characters, interwoven into the real history. But I don't think reincarnation is fantasy or magic. I think it's real, right? So but a lot of people don't know where to categorize it. So that's honestly one of my challenges. It's kind of like it is that if you want that, but I don't know what shelf it would be on in Barnes and Noble. When I wrote my first novel series, and I have I'm not like this big best-selling author yet. Hopefully, that might get there. But I have fans in different parts of the world, and I have fans that are Muslim and right-wing Christian, and these groups that would never have read a nonfiction book on reincarnation. It just would have never occurred to them. They read the novels and they're suspending the disbelief, like you're talking about, and then all of a sudden they open up and go, "Wow, wait a minute! It just it just feels so real, right?" But they never would have considered it before. And I think that's why I wanted to do the group as fictional or factual. And also, we're actually going to do a class next week about how to turn your story into a story, right? So that it can be really, we can help people take their like, oh, I remember, like me, I remember I was this teenage boy, blah blah blah. But how is that really a story, right? It's just kind of an account as opposed to a story. So that is what that's what we want to do. The more we get people, fiction is powerful in shifting brains. It's kind of sad sometimes you read some of the books, and you think, oh, it's a past life story. And you're like, yeah, but you don't really know how it works, or you're just writing it as an idea, like you would say time travel, and in a DeLorean, which is it's a great story and a great movie. But if you're a scientist and you're working on time travel, it would probably drive you crazy. Actually, I was thinking that would be probably the best way to name is like we meet again and again, and then again and again and again for the third one. And of course, it'll say under there, we meet again, book 3 or something. But yeah, I want to tell you a little teaser about Devin, because he has past lives with them too. And in one of his past lives, he is Giovanni Boccaccio. And I don't know how many of y'all know who Giovanni Boccaccio was, but he wrote a book called The Decameron. Is anybody, I don't know if you've ever heard of that book, But it's known, it's so many things in that one book. He also wrote the first book on famous women. And so he had all these like 100 women stories in one of the books. He was a really interesting character. He lived in Florence, Italy in the like early 1300s. And the Decameron is set during the Black Plague. And so it's kind of like the book about the Black Plague. But anyway, so I have him, a little spoiler or a little teaser for what's going to happen in a future book. But Devin is definitely, we see him again, in terms of that. But yeah, the story starts out, and at first you meet Mary Ellen. She's doing role play with an online guy, right? And you meet people online, and I don't know anybody here's done role play, but it's really fun where you like one person starts with a sentence and then the other person takes it and grows with it. So you find out she has a really kind of small world that she lives in, but a big imagination. And so she's doing this role play, and in the role play, like she's in this huge, adventure and chasing things, and like you see that she's kind of got this dream, but in real life, she works in a little antique shop, and then she finds out that this guy Devin comes in and purchases the antique shop, and so now all of a sudden, oh crap, she doesn't have a job anymore, and she was planning to go to graduate school, and now can't because she doesn't have a place to live or work because she was living above the shop, and so she's kind of desperate for money. Her sister's ill, and her sister fun. I love Shelley. Yeah, I mean, Shelley is one of those, I think we've all kind of known those people who are really connected on a lot of levels. And I don't know if you figured out who her nomadic nomads are. Bolt, Benji, uh, Lena, and Rosie. When she goes into her dreams, those are real people. And when she goes into her dreams, she's kind of like traveling, astral traveling with this group. So anyway, I just love Shelley. But Shelly's ill, and so she's like, Shelly needs medicine, and her grandmother needs help, and so um, and she's got a best friend who's trying to get her to do all kinds of adventurous things that she wouldn't normally do, and so she sees a posting for an artist model, and she's a art history slash symbologist symbiotics student, right? So to be immortalized in art is important, and so she gets this sees this notice, and her friend talks her into posing for this artist, and I guess I'm giving away most of the first chapter, but while she's posing, she starts kind of drifts off into memories of being this nun in the 1930s in Brazil. Yeah, and then of course the next chapter I explain why he is the way he is, right? And so yeah, so they're both, he's having an experience where she's just, you know, um, he's kind of obsessed with her. He's like, what is it that's drawing me? But it's also kind of you see something that's like so attractive. And I don't mean necessarily physically attractive, although I'm sure she is. Although you probably see, I don't get really descriptive with characters. I like the readers to imagine, but more like he's so drawn to her, but then it's also making him face a lot of stuff that he's not necessarily, been ready to face. Um, so, um, so that's kind of, they call it in writing, the inciting incident is when she needs to pose, and then she goes to pose for him. And he's kind of your, passionate artist. And, he's much more emotional. I don't know how many here know about Enneagrams. Are you familiar? Y'all familiar
Oh,
with Enneagrams?
yeah.
And I was really, I really liked using the Enneagrams to kind of tell me who their characters were and how different they are, right? Because you don't want two characters that are too much alike. So she's got different skills than he does, but they end up kind of, it's a dance at first about whether there's going to be anything between them. I I love words too, so that would be probably something that I have like a document where I've been collecting all these words and trying to figure out how they fit in. And one of the characteristics of Marielle is that she's omnilingual, so she can speak pretty much any language kind of intuitively. I don't necessarily get specific on this in this book, but I do think that one of the things about reincarnation is that when people do have natural language abilities, it very well could be from a previous lifetime. So to have her, have that kind of ability, I just liked the way she, and so that kind of ties into the symbols, because for her, words are symbols, language is symbols. So I love that. And I also have a couple of poems I wanted to read. Everything I write has kind of a metaphysical message, has kind of the same vibe. Whether I'm talking about a little bit sexy, right? You know, it's a little bit sexy, my novel, or I'm talking about a YA novel, or I'm talking about a children's book. They all have kind of the same kind of vibe. So I thought I'd read this. Oh, it says I can't minimize. Let's see. Can I pull up? Okay, I can read. Okay, so this one is called Sometimes I Wonder. Sometimes I wonder if this isn't home, and I don't mean Paris or London or Rome. I'm talking about another other place, before this time and outside this space. A place where I come from and will go to again, a world so mysterious it makes my head spin. This world is all magic with a glow that's so bright, when I squeeze my eyes shut, I still feel the light. Some call it heaven, some paradise. To me, it's a party where everyone's nice. We have friends who will be there with warm, open hands and music to greet us like grand marching bands. It's the place where we plan who we'll be with and when. We pick out our names like Sarah or Ben, or Williams, Rodriguez, Ivana, or Chen. Whoever we choose will feel like our kin. We decide on our lessons, the paths we will take, awards we might go for, and mistakes we might make. For life isn't easy and not always fun, but easy is boring, like games always won. So we set up our challenges and mountains so high to test our endurance and reach for the sky. It doesn't much matter if we get to the top. What matters much more is what we do when we stop. Do we smell the roses, admire the bees, enjoy the sensation of a warm ocean breeze? Or do we stew and we fuss and blame someone else instead of taking a look back into ourselves? Do we ask for help and give in return? It's best when we realize there's a lesson to learn. As wise men once said, what matters in the end, does the love you receive match the love you spend? I have one piece of wisdom for a smart kid like you, advice I hope you'll hear and realize it's true. Abandon all jealousy, anger, and greed, and open your heart to people in need. Give yourself freely with no fear and no doubt, and then you'll be proud of how you turned out. So when you're back home and see your old friends, all will sing and cheer and rejoice in the end. It's called This Isn't My First Time. This isn't my first time, of that I am sure. I've taken this trip and been on this tour. The scenery's different, the people are too, but green is still green and blue is still blue. If I try really hard, I just might recall my life before I was born so small. When I was grown with a different name, but inside my soul was exactly the same. I know it sounds strange, like it's false or a steal. You don't have to believe me, but I promise it's real. A memory feels different from a story or lie. You might remember too if you give it a try. You can start with a name, a time, or a place. You can be any age, size, gender, or race. You won't be the first one to find that it's true. People before us know what we knew, like Benjamin Franklin, Socrates, and Thoreau. Even Dickens and Ford were in the know of the truth and the magic of living before, hundreds of years or fourscore ago. Some ask for proof. It's there if you look in research, religion, or a philosophy book. It's called Reincarnation, and it's really cool to use your life before as a clue and a tool to help understand why you're here and you're now, to create your current life into one really big wow. If you can't remember, don't worry, don't strive. It might just be saying this is your first life. Either way, it's okay. It's all just a quest, a way for your soul to rise to its best, to live and to give, to learn and to know, to plant the best seeds for your next life to grow.
I have a couple of things I want to say, and one is that I've met a lot of people, and there aren't that many people that I have met that have a spirit that is so strong as yours, Brownell. It really rises just out of you, and it's such a pleasure to see you speak, to hear you speak. I know that I think we all need to see people like you to help us to just remember that life is it's not easy, but it's very doable, and we just have to keep going, just keep our spirits up, kind of thing. And I think that what you're the way you are is wonderful. And secondly, I want to say that um,
Thank you.
I had thank you for putting the book to making it available for us to read. And I have been able to read about 25% or something like that. It says on the machine, and I really I keep wanting to just put everything else aside and continue to read it. I listen to a lot of books while I'm doing things. I don't read that many. And I just am finding it very, very enjoyable, and um, just pulls me right in. I think your economy of words and the way you use your sentences and all that kind of stuff is really top notch.
Thank you.
It's I can't writing is not simple, and good writing is a real art. And I just, I'm not, I just want to tell you how I honestly feel about it. That's what we're talking now. So I'm just telling you, it's a great style that you have. And I'm really looking forward to completing the book. Now, are you saying that this is the first of 3 books?
That's great. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
And
Well,
they get better and better, I have to say. I'm, just to brag a little bit, but like the first one's good, but man, it really, really gets good. One of the things too, when you're talking about the speed of reading it, is I have found that some people, like can't put it down and stay up all night, right? And then I've had some people like could read a section and just keep rereading it, because I
okay.
like to throw a lot of deep stuff in there, mixed in with some, flirtation or, adventure or whatever. So it's kind of fun that some people are like, no, I'm like, you just wrote something deep here. I gotta sit with her for a while.
Right.
And I was reading just yesterday, the day before. I don't know if anybody knows the Robert Johnson books, He, She, and We, and they're all based on mythology. And there's one about for women, it's Cupid and Psyche, or Eros and Psyche, if you know any mythology. So I was doing all this research, and like, but Psyche is, or Eros, I should say. Psyche is the soul, right? If you know how that all the story ties, and Eros is kind of this constant discovery and its energy. And so I was just like really getting into that, and also getting into like the whole free will thing. And so it's really fun to like. I mean, it takes me a lot of time to get into some of that research to write 2 paragraphs that get into something that goes deep. But so yeah, some people don't read it as fast as others because they're pondering, the message. So thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Well, I'm really looking forward to it. If there's anything I'm going to tell everybody I run into about you and about your book, and really look forward to it. I think it's wonderful that Carol is giving us an introduction to you. It's really good for us. So
Well,
thank you.
thank you. Yeah, I haven't done a whole lot of marketing for my books, even though my background's marketing. So there's, it's kind of like the doctor's kids are sick or whatever. But
Yeah.
but I really do want to launch this next year, and I want to reach people, right? And so I love this community, being able to be just so open with, we can share each other's stories and help promote each other's missions, because the more we do that, the more everybody wins, and the more we get the message out. So I'm looking forward to that, Jim, getting to know you better.
Certainly, not everybody responds to a straightforward talk about reincarnation. Like you said, not everybody's ready for that. But if you can sneak that thought in and have it kind of reverberating in their brain, that's to me, if that's the most we can look for from that person, well, hallelujah.
Yeah.
We've made
Little
some
by little,
progress
that
where
open their
maybe
mind,
one
right?
was exactly. Yeah.
I love that. Well, it's like all of us, right? If we have a memory and then we also might remember 2 or 3 past lives, and how do they weave together? And like, what are the lessons that are the threads through them? And so I just wrote it in a fictional.